بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات اللہم صلی علی جس دم حسن کا زہر سے ٹکڑے جگر ہوا، جس دم حسن کا زہر سے ٹکڑے جگر ہوا، جس دم حسن کا زہر ٹکڑے جگر ہوا، سہ پارا دل کا آہوں سے زیر و زبر، سم کا جو روح پاک پہ ظاہر اثر ہوا، حال اس امام پاک کا ایک دم ہوا، حال اس امام پاک کا ایک دم دے گئے، راحت میں فرق اور شکم میں خلل پڑا، کٹ کر کلیجہ تشت کے اندر نکل پڑا، کٹ کر کلیجہ تشت کے اندر نکل پڑا، فرماتے تھے حسن کے بلاؤ حسین کو، تھا دم بدم یہ حکم کہ لاؤ حسین، بھائی کا حال زار سناؤ حسین کو، ٹکڑے میرے جگر کے دکھاؤ حسین کو، ٹکڑے میرے جگر کے دکھاؤ حسین کو، کہہ دو کہ جلد آئیے رحلت کا وقت ہے، سن جائیے کچھ آ کے وصیت کا وقت ہے، سن جائیے کچھ آ کے وصیت کا وقت ہے، آئے حسین تین میں با چشم اشک با چلاتے تھے کہ آپ کی غربت کے مین، شبر گلے کو چوم کے کہتے تھے بار بار، میں تم پہ صدقے اے میرے نانا کی یاد، میں تم پہ صدقے میرے نانا کی یاد، مجھ سے زیادہ ظلم و ستم تم پہ ہوئیں گے، ہم قبر میں تمہاری مصیبت پہ روئیں گے، ہم قبر میں تمہاری مصیبت پہ روئیں گے، بھیا تمہاری گود میں نکلے گا میرا، تم دو گے ہم کو غسل و کفن جب مریں گے، ہاں ہوگا تمہارے پاس نہ کوئی بجائے سلام، قاتل سرغان ہوئے گا یا خنجر ستم، कातिल सरहाने होएगा या खंजरे शब्बे तो बाद मएगे भी राहत से सोएगा लाशा तुम्हारा घोड़ों से पामाल होएगा लाशा तुम्हारा घोड़ों से पामाल होएगा जिस दम हसन का जहर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलावत मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलावत अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ले अला मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद बारे दीगर आवाज़ बुलंद सलावत अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ले अला मोहम्मद वाले मोमिन मोमिनात अस्सलामु अलैकुम. Just a quick reminder that inshallah tonight will be the last lecture in our series with guest speaker Maulana Sayyid Abbas Razavian, and following the majlis we'll be joined for Nahakhani by guest reciter Janab Ali Zia Rizvi. Our next series of programs will take place related to the Shahadat of Imam Hassan Askari alayhi salam and the programs for 8th and 9th Rabiul Awwal. Additional details regarding that program series will be shared via email. On behalf of Jafaria Islamic Society, I'd like to take a moment to thank Maulana Sayyid Abbas Razavian for accepting our invitation. I know this is your first time to Jafaria Islamic Society, but we're hopeful that inshallah you keep coming and accepting our invitations in the future. If I can request all the Mu'mineen and Mu'minat sitting here for Maulana Sayyid Abbas Razavian and his family's health, safety, and well-being, please recite the loudest of your salawats ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali. Lastly, if I can request all of you to recite Surah Fatiha and Surah Ikhlas for all the marhumeen on the Jafaria Memorial Board, for all the marhumeen of everyone in attendance tonight, and for all the marhumeen of today's sponsors, including Marhum Sayyid Wasi Muhammad Zaidi, Marhuma Sayyida Umme Farwa Zaidi, Marhum Sayyid Raza Ali Zaidi, Marhum Sayyid Manzoor Alim Zaidi, Marhum Sayyid Muhammad Ali Gardezi, Marhum Sayyid Wahid Ali Gardezi, and all the marhumeen of the Gardezi family. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Please join me in inviting Maulana Sayyid Abbas Razavian up to the minbar with the loudest of your salawats upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Salli ala Muhammad wa ali. Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. send you my condolences for the 28th of Safar, the passing away of the best of God's creation, Rasulullah, and also passing away of Imam Hassan ibn Ali alayhi salam, the martyrdom of Imam Hassan ibn Ali. Also, there is some narrations that the end of Safar is also the martyrdom of Ali ibn Musa Rida. And if it's tonight or tomorrow night, we don't know, depends on the moon sighting. But the shrine in Mashhad takes the last day of the month of Safar as the martyrdom of Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida. For all the infallibles, please recite Salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad wa Ajil Farj. When you want to gauge a person and to see how valuable their life is, you look at their relationship with God, their relationship with their friends, society, and you look at relationship with their enemies. Imam Hassan alayhi salam, for 7 years he lived with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. After that, 30 years he lived with Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam and during the imamat of Ali alayhi salam. And then 10 years he had imamat. During this time period of his life, there are many lessons to learn and much for us as followers of Ahlul Bayt, that we truly understand the imams to be a source of pride for us. And we say that they are uncomparable, unparalleled by anyone else that has lived in this earth. Imam Hassan alayhi salam, when you look at his life, you see how much love Rasulullah had for him. And maybe that is why the 28th of Safar, we remember both of them together. Because Rasulullah would mention as Imam Hassan would be his own son, even though technically it's his grandson. Look at the hadith, look at verses of Quran. In Mubahila, when instructed to bring the sons, actually Rasulullah brought his grandsons, Abna'ana wa Abna'akum. And everyone was waiting to be in one of these categories. When the Christians of Najran came for a dua competition, which is Mubahila, to seek the curse of God upon the person that is lying. So therefore Rasulullah is going to bring the best person, or he's going to be instructed from God to bring the best. And he brought Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein according to Shia and Sunni. And of course, for Nisa, which is plural, brought one lady, Lady Fatima Zahra, Salamullah alayha. So all the categories of Mubahila are different. Because sons, he brought grandsons. Because Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, from the hadith of Rasulullah, he would call them my own sons. And for women, which is plural, about one lady. And then this category for us, because they asked Ali ibn Musa Rida, Ma'mun asked him, which verse of the Quran has the highest fada'il of Ali alayhi salam? Which verse in the Quran in Hadith Imam Rida says Mubahila? Because God mentions Ali ibn Abi Talib as nafs payyambar. So recite Salat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. And you have in Sunni literature also, they say, which are the afdal, who are the best of companions? They start mentioning the companions. And he says, you didn't mention Ali ibn Abi Talib. He says, I thought you asked about the companions. I didn't know you're asking about the nafs, the soul of Rasulullah. It's in Sunni hadith. So when you understand Mubahila, you start to understand Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, because they are the sons of Rasulullah. Look at the hadith also. When Imam Hassan alayhi salam was born, he was wrapped in a bundle, and Rasulullah says, Hati ibni, bring my son for me. Nad'u, and you see, for example, or another narration from Anas ibn Malik, Ya Anas, du ibni wa thamaratu fu'adi, bring my son for me, bring my heart for me, the fruit of my heart for me. Then mentioning while he's 2 or 3 years old, Rasulullah, from that time, Man adani fa'in man ada hada faqad adani. Whoever bothers, abuses Hassan has bothered me from the age as a toddler. When Rasulullah says this, the understanding that because of the nur of Imamah, the light of guidance will be continued with Imam Hassan. So he is telling and instructing people to follow Hassan ibn Ali, that whoever bothers him will bother me. We'll talk about this statements later on, inshallah. You see other narrations, for example, you see Hakim Nishaburi bring Al-Hasan wal-Husayn ibnai. Man ahabbahuma ahabbani. Wa man ahabbani ahabbahullah. Wa man ahabbahullah adkhalahum jannah. Hassan and Hussein are my sons. Whoever loves them, loves me. Whoever loves me, loves Allah. Whoever loves Imam Hassan alayhi salam will enter heaven. Alhamdulillah that Allah has blessed us with the love of Hassan ibn Ali. Brothers, dear sisters, if you cry for Imam Hassan tonight, don't wait for me, for the musibah to wait. You don't need to wait for the musibah to cry for Imam Hassan. Just hearing his beautiful name, hearing the verses of Quran about him, mentioning his fada'il is enough to cry. Once I was in Qom, there's actually a taxi driver that takes me sometimes to the airport. And he is one of the most religious taxi drivers that I know. He's young, but he is hayati, they say. He goes to the majalis of Ahlul Bayt all the time. Actually, he says that during the pandemic, he says we never canceled one program. We have 300-400 people. We came all the time. He says, and nobody got COVID. That's what he was saying. He says, when we speak of Ahlul Bayt, we don't even have someone to do Noha Khani for us, which is usually in Iran, you always have the scholar and you have the Noha Khan, for example. He says the fact that when you hear Fada'il of Ahlul Bayt, it's as if they're praising your own father and you start to cry. He says, we don't need anyone to make us cry. We just hear the Fada'il, and when you hear the Fada'il, he says, the whole time we're crying when we're hearing the Fada'il of Ahlul Bayt. Because there is so much nur and light. That's what I believe. When the nur of Imam Hassan and you have a majlis for him, or Ahlul Bayt, that nur is so intense that it causes your tears to flow. You don't need necessarily me to mention the masa'ib and tell you how he was poisoned. You don't need to tell me. You don't need me to tell you that they tried to assassinate him 70 different times. 70 different times. You don't need me to tell for you to cry. That at the end, he had to seek refuge in Madain for 3 months because his own army wanted to kill him. He did not feel secure. And that why Madain? Because that's where Salman al-Farsi was the wali during the time of Imam Ali. Madain was the place where Imam Ali alayhi salam put Salman, and the Iranians at that time, the Persians were there, and he trusted them. And he goes in Madain and seeks refuge with the Persians in Madain. So you see this narration also from Hakim Nishaburi, Sunni source. وَمَنْ أَبْغَضَهُمَا أَبْغَضَنِي وَمَنْ أَبْغَضَنِي أَبْغَضَهُ اللَّهُ وَمَنْ أَبْغَضَهُ اللَّهُ أَدْخَلَهُ النَّارِ. And whoever hates these two hates me. Whoever hates me hates Allah, and whoever hates Allah will go to the hellfire. What does this hadith mean? Hakim Nishaburi. What does this mean? You bring this hadith. You bring a sahih hadith. You bring a credible hadith. But what does this mean? It means that anybody, brother and sister, that would fight, hatred is one thing. Would you not agree with me that fighting and being at war with Hassan ibn Ali is the utmost instance of hatred? So whoever goes and fights, according to this Sunni narration, against Imam Hassan, his place is the hellfire. His place is in the hellfire. So therefore, you see, brothers and sisters, that Rasulullah, you are making him happy when you're coming here for Imam Hassan. You're making him happy because he said, bring my son. And you say the sahib of Azar for Imam Hassan is Rasulullah, Imam Ali, Lady Fatima, alayhim as-salam, salawatullah alayhim ajma'in. How was Imam Hassan's relationship with God? So we said, a person, you want to see their value, how great they are, their legacy. First, see their relationship with God. This is the kamal and the source of all kamal and perfection of everyone, especially the prophets and imams. If it was not for this connection to God, then all those fada'il that we have of Imam Ali and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, they would not exist. Whatever they have is because of the connection to God, showing us that if you truly worship God, if you truly know God, this is the result. This is what will happen. You will be the most knowledgeable. You'll be the most courageous. You'll be the most successful. You'll be the most sincere. They are actual examples of the true worshiper of God and what they became and what we can become. Imam Hassan alayhi salam, when you look about his worship, أن حسن ibn Ali in مناقب آل أبي طالب كان إذا تودع أردعت مفاصله. When he came not only in the prayer, when he came to get wudu, his joints would shake. His joints would shake. وَأَصْفَرَّ لَوْنُهُ. What's asfar means? Asfar means yellow. His face would become yellow. He's not even in salat yet. He is just preparing for salah. Shaking, skin is yellow. فَقِيلَ لَهُ فِي ذَلِكَ فَقَالَ. And they ask him, why does this happen to you? Why do you shake? Why does your face become yellow? He says, حَقٌّ عَلَى كُلِّ مَنْ وَقَفَ بَيْنَ يَدَيْ رَبِّ الْأَرْشِ أَنْ يَصْفَرَّ لَوْنُهُ وَتَرْتَعِدَ مَفْصَلُهُ. Actually, any person, every person that is going to talk to God, because we believe that salat is actually ziyarat of God, is mi'rajul mu'min. It is for us mi'raj, and for us it is ziyarat and visitation of God. So if a person truly believes this, and I tell myself this, do not think I am the salat master, or I have a black belt, for example, in salat. I do not have a black belt in salat. I'm saying this for myself to learn that salat should be in this way. I'm telling myself this, that you're going to visit God, you're going to do mi'raj of God, therefore you should shake. You should, things should be different because you're speaking to God. Then he says, when he would come into the masjid, Hassan ibn Ali, بَلَغَ بَابَ الْمَسْجِدْ رَفَعَ رَأْسَهُ. Then he would look, he put his head up. Imagine, I'm assuming the imams, when they would walk, their heads would be down. Actually, Fatima Zahra, one of the ways they say she walked like Rasulullah, the ulama analyzed it, was a way she walked that her head was first like Rasulullah. Her head was down and not looking obviously at others as much. He opens, he faces, his face goes high, his head goes, rafa'a, it becomes up. وَيَقُولُ إِلَهِ ضَيْفُكَ بِبَابِكَ. God, your guest is at your doors. Your guest is at your doors. I'm coming to your house. Masjid is the house of God. I'm at your doors. Ya Muhsin, O doer of good, قَدْ أَتَاكَ الْمَصِيرُ. The person that has done evil has come to see you. The person that has done sayya'ah has the Imams alayhi salam are of course infallible, but the way that they would gauge themselves and talk to themselves is the relationship between Abd and Mawla. They would love to talk like this because Allah likes someone to hear this. فَتَجَاوَزْ عَنْ قَبِيهِ مَا عِنْدِي بِجَمِيلَ مَا عِنْدَكَ يَا كَرِيمٌ. So therefore forgive what you see of me. Hassan ibn Ali coming to the masjid of God, seeing himself, humbling himself before he prays. Sometimes, brothers and sisters, salat makes us so arrogant. Salat makes us a deadly person because we become full of arrogance when we do salat sometimes. And we think that those that don't do salat or those that don't do it like how we do, we think they're lower than us. Is this appropriate? Is this how a musalli should be? Or should a musalli be like Imam Hassan? That he sees himself as musi, he sees himself as a sinner, he sees himself as a person that God should forgive before coming to talk to him. That is ibadah. If you do not become more humble in ibadah, then that is the worship of shaitan. Shaitan worship God too. But the first lesson we learn, and when you look at the chronology of insan, the first lesson of shaitan And the way that he has been deviated was because of istikbar, because of arrogance. Because of arrogance, shaitan fell. Then you see the second lesson in the history of man. You see, for example, Adam eat from the forbidden tree. Why? Because of, in order to live a long life, for example, in order to benefit from this. And the third mistake you see Qabil killed Habil because of jealousy. So look at these lessons in order. The first mistake was arrogance. But Imam Hassan alayhi salam is teaching us, when you approach God, approach him humbly. When you approach the majlis of Imam Hussein, approach it humbly. When you go to any type of worship, approach it humbly. Then you see in the hadith, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, this is in the book of Amali, Anna al-Hasan ibn Ali, Kana a'bad al-nas, Imam Baqir alayhi salam says. He was the best worshipper of his time. وَأَزْهَدَهُمْ, and he disdained from the world. He was a zahid. وَأَفْضَلَهُمْ, and the best in virtue. وَكَانَ إِذَا حَجَّ مَاشِيًا, he would do hajj and he would walk for hajj. وَرُبَّمَا مَشَى حَافِيًا, and sometimes he would do hajj barefooted. وَكَانَ إِذَا ذَكَرَ الْمَوْتِ بَكَى, and when he would remember death, he would cry. Hassan ibn Ali. Should we not remember death and cry? Are we guaranteed of heaven? Are we guaranteed of freedom from the hellfire? When he would think of death, he would cry. وَإِذَا ذَكَرَ الْقَبْرِ بَكَى, when he would think of the grave, he would cry. وَإِذَا ذَكَرَ الْبَعْثِ وَالنُّشُورِ بَكَى, and when he would think of when we are resurrected, gathered together, he would cry. وَإِذَا ذَكَرَ الْمَمَرَّ عَلَى الصِّرَاطِ بَكَى, and when thinking how it's going to be that I'm going to pass the Sarat, he would cry. Brothers and sisters, these are all realities. It's not Sarat a reality, it's not death reality. It's not this, walking through in Ba'ath a reality. Sometimes we are so busy with our lives, so busy with things that we make for ourselves, we burden ourselves, that we forget about the most important thing of why we're here. We forget that this world, my dear brother, my dear sister, that this world is a bridge for us. We're going to pass it. It's either going to be a good place for us, a bad place, whatever it is, we're going to pass it. It's going to pass like the blink of an eye, of how Rasulullah mentions that when a person travels and is in the shade for one period of time, this life in this world for me is like a person that just stops, is a station, and he's under shade to rest a little bit, and then he moves. There's this journey towards us and God, and this station, which we call it life, is going to pass very fastly. And we always need to come to centers. We always need to listen to admonition and advice to tell us again, to give us motivation that work for the hereafter, fear for the hereafter. Nobody has guaranteed that they'll go to heaven. There's no guarantee. So this is the first part, that Imam Hassan's life was a life dedicated to worship, was a life dedicated to crying, and that he took his worship seriously. When it comes to God, Mabda, he would cry and shake. When it would come to Ma'ad, and the hereafter, he would cry. So we should, inshallah, in the same way, have a plan for ourselves. Have a plan that we, inshallah, should be careful and guard ourselves so that we can not regret our life in this world, inshallah. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But I ask you this question, is it sufficient for a person just to be a good worshiper of God? Do we as humans have other obligations in our lives? Yes, we have obligations to people, to one another. Imam Ali alayhi salam, I mentioned the hadith last night, that God has taken huquq an-nas muqaddamatan ala huquqih. He has taken the rights of the people before his own right. Imam Ali alayhi salam in narration. And if you want to satisfy the right of God, satisfy the rights of the people. Unfortunately, in society, in many pious people, they think that is only mafatihul janan. That's our huquq. It's just to read Mafatih, which is great, a great book of worship. But there's also another section of life, which one of our ulama mentioned and wrote a book, Mafatihul Hayat, the keys of life, and that is how to treat one another. In this book, actually, Ayatollah Jawadi Ahmadi wrote it. He even has the rights of animals, how we should treat the animal. And that even an animal that is thirsty, that you give your own water to that animal, and you want to do wudu, you give your water to that animal and you do tayammum, for example. Yes, the animals have rights, let alone humans. How was Imam Hassan alayhi salam with the people? And you see, and I gave this example, Shahid Mutahari mentions people that only focus on one part of life, but they don't focus on other parts, like a cartoon that has a big nose or a big ear or big forehead or big chin. Because people are unbalanced. They don't come to worship God completely. But Imams of Ahlul Bayt, alayhim salam, they excelled in every dimension of human life. And of course, worshiping God at the same time, respecting human rights. Imam Hassan alayhi salam once, is actually in Bidayah wa Nihaya. This is a book of history from Ahlul Sunnah. In Bidayah and Nihaya mentions that he was crossing by a person that was sharing, is actually a slave. He was sharing his meal in a garden with a dog. Sharing his food with a dog. See? And asked, Imam Hassan was curious, and in this source of history, he asked, why are you sharing your food basically with this animal? He says, قال الغلام أني أستحي منه أن آكل ولا أطعمه. I am embarrassed that I eat and this dog does not eat. Many times in society that we live today, we are so shameless that we'll eat in front of people that are hungry and chow down and send pictures, and people, they cannot afford it. We'll flex, for example, our wealth, flex our journeys, our trips, but we are not mindful there are people that also want to be on this vacation. They also want to have some of that steak, especially the type that they can put some salt on it like this. They also want to enjoy some of that as well. But Imam Hassan alayhi salam in this story asks him, why are you sharing your meal to the servant? He says, I am embarrassed that a dog I'm eating and this dog is not eating. Then Imam Hassan alayhi salam says, I'll come back. Don't leave your place. He goes back. He finds the owner of the slave. He really loves that this person shared his meal with the dog. He goes and finds the owner. He finds the owner of the garden, and he purchases the slave and sets him free. And he gets the land that that person was at, and he says, this is your garden from now on. This is why we call Imam Hassan Kareem of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, generous of Ahlul Bayt. He would give people so much money that that poor person would not be poor anymore. He would alleviate and remove them from poverty. He would take all his money that he had, and Imam Ali alayhi salam had a lot of wealth because he made lots of wells during his time period, in the Red Sea, by the Red Sea in Medina. Today there's Bi'r Ali, wells that Ali ibn Abi Talib dug, and land that he farmed or had people farm for him, and had this huge amount of income. And he gave it to Imam Hassan alayhi salam. And therefore you see that Imam Hassan would take sometimes this vast amount of wealth and split it. This half of it for me, half of it for the poor. Let's recite Salat ala Muhammad wa ali. He would eat with the poor. This is in Manaqib al Abi Talib. I'm giving you the source. That mentions that Imam Ali alayhi salam, that Imam Hassan was passing ala al-fuqara wa qad wada'u, and they placed their table spread and they're eating bread. And they asked the poor, they're eating humble food. And they asked Imam Hassan, why don't you join us? maybe someone that was from an affluent family, maybe somebody that had large amounts of wealth, and say, this food that you're eating isn't for me. I don't want to sit with you. Imam Hassan alayhi salam sits down with the poor, as we mentioned today in Sunday school, that one of the 5 things the Prophet used to do was sit with the poor, eat with the poor, mentioning to him that Inna Allah la yuhibbul mustakbirin. God does not love the arrogant, and he sat down with them. He waited until all of them had their meal. He ate with them until all of them had their meal. Then he invited them to his house. Then he invited them to the house, and he invited them for a meal, the poor. He ate with them and he invited them over. ثُمَّ دَعَاهُمْ إِلَى الضِّيَافَةِ. Imam Ali alayhi salam was in the same way. They asked Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, why don't you come, this day to our gathering, to this diyafa? Imam Ali alayhi salam asked, what about the poor? He says that, okay, the poor will invite another day, but come to our diyafa. He says, invite me that same day that the poor will be coming to your house. I want to be in that gathering. See. ثُمَّ دَعَاهُمْ إِلَى الضِّيَافَةِ وَأَطْعَمَهُمْ وَكَسَاهُمْ. He invited them to be guests of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and he gave them clothes. This is Kareem of Ahlul Bayt, as recited in the Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa Jafaria. How was Imam Hassan alayhi salam with his enemies? See, we talked about a person that is complete. His relationship with God is perfect. His relationship with the people is perfect. But also, how does he treat his enemies? You maybe not hear as much about the courage of Hassan ibn Ali. That Hassan ibn Ali was a champion in Siffin, in Jamal, in these battles. They say that Muhammad Hanafiya was one of the best people. They say that nobody they knew was higher than Muhammad ibn Hanafiya except for Hassanain alayhi salam. That Imam Ali in the Battle of Jamal sends Muhammad Hanafiya to go, and even someone is courageous and brave and has the faith of Muhammad Hanafiya cannot go forward and comes back. But then he sends Hassan ibn Ali. And Hassan ibn Ali is victorious and triumphs and wins. And then when he comes back, Imam Ali alayhi salam very humbly mentions the reason for this and says that Muhammad Hanafiya is my son, but Hassan ibn Ali is the son of Rasulullah sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. A person comes to Rasulullah, and at that time he comes in a very threatening way for Rasulullah, a Bedouin, and he threatens the Prophet of Islam. And he claims that the Prophet is not a prophet, that na'udhu billah, that he is lying. How does Rasulullah treat his enemies? He says, actually, would you like someone from me to answer you? So he sends Hassan ibn Ali in this hadith that we have. Imam Hassan comes here, and Rasulullah really loved Imam Hassan alayhi salam. He would see Imam Hassan alayhi salam, they would walk sometimes, this is part of the same hadith, that Rasulullah would walk with Imam Hassan and praise him and look at him. وَهُوَ وَلَدِي وَطَاهِرْ فِي نَفْسِي وَذِلْعٌ مِّنْ أَطْلَائِي هَذَا سِبْتِي وَغُرَّةَ عَيْنِي بِأَبِي هُوَ. May I be sacrificed for him. He is the delight of my eyes. He is my son, my purification. He say, Anta tufahati. You are the apple, you are my fruit. Wa anta habibi. Talking Rasulullah, speaking to Imam Hassan, expressing his love. How important is it for fathers, mothers to express love for their children? Wa muhjata qalbi. You are the blood of my heart. Wa akhadha bayyadi. And he would take the hand of Imam Hassan and would walk with him. وَهُوَ لَا يَرْفَعُ بَصَرَهُ عَنْ. And they saw, the narrator says, Rasulullah would not stop looking at Hassan ibn Ali. The jamal of Hassan ibn Ali, the love of Hassan ibn Ali. So you understand from the same hadith, when this Bedouin comes that how much he trusts Hassan ibn Ali, because Hassan ibn Ali is at a young age. He was about 7 years of age when Rasulullah passed away. Hassan ibn Ali knows how to treat his enemies, knows how to treat the enemies of Rasulullah with patience. They are patient because they want to guide everyone. They want to make sure that nobody leaves this world because they see the reality of the fire. So immediately he calms them down with poetry. With nice poetry, he calms this person down and then begins to tell this person in this hadith about your plans. I know what you're going to do. You planned to actually assassinate Rasulullah. And he informs, says, you are planning to assassinate him. And you were worried about your family members. And your tribe said, we will take care of your family members. But this is your intention. Then that person becomes shocked. He says, as if he was in that meeting. Now definitely I come to attack Rasulullah, and he's dealing with me with poetry, with niceness, and now he's informing me of things that nobody else knows. So with this pleasant and patient manner of Imam Hassan salam, this person says, I want to become Muslim now. Teach me something about Islam. And they teach him the Shahadatain. And he comes back, turns around. Imagine his tribe. They're saying, so did you kill him? At the end they say, did you kill him? Did you assassinate him? Actually, I'm a Muslim now. I came to him, assassinate Rasulullah. But Hassan ibn Ali spoke to me in such a gentle way, such a way that I am now a Muslim. This is how Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam would treat their enemies. Sometimes they would come from Sham, Syria, a place full of propaganda, a place where they would curse Imam Ali on the mimbars, a place where a person forgot in Friday prayers to curse Ali ibn Abi Talib. Right then, he said, let me curse Ali alayhi salam 1,000 times, and they made a masjid of La'an because of that incident that he cursed Ali alayhi salam 1,000 times. They made a masjid there. A person comes to Sham, comes to the Imam, and disrespects Ali ibn Abi Talib. But then they begin to speak. The Imam begins to speak with them. Where are you from? Are you from somewhere far from here? Can I help you? Can I give you a place of shelter? Can I give you food? He says, I'm cursing his father. I'm cursing his father, and he wants to offer me a place to stay. He wants to offer me food. He says, I wish as if the land opened up and I melted inside that land. That is the generosity and patience that we have from Imams. Even though everyone knows Nasb of Ali is equal to Najasat, someone that's a Nasib, a Nawasib, is actually in the hadith, Anjas min Kalb, is more najis than a dog. But Imam Ali, Imam Hassan, and Imam Hussein, the patience that they had with their enemies was remarkable. Let's recite another salawat ala Muhammad, Ali Muhammad. When dealing with Muawiyah, Imam Hassan alayhi salam was very wise and knew that at that time he had to have peace with Muawiyah. One of his generals had 12,000 soldiers, and Muawiyah with 1 million dirhams buys his top general, leaving 8,000 people to go to the army of Muawiyah. Only 4,000 people left. But Imam Hassan alayhi salam in the tradition has, if you want to see all of aql, all of intellect, look at Hassan ibn Ali. He did not want to start a war that he knew he would lose. He did not want to continue a battle that he knew he would lose. So he was very wise at that time. Imagine if Muawiyah were to capture Hassan ibn Ali and to make him, say, for example, capture him and set him free, how much pain would that be for followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam? But Hassan ibn Ali at that time accepted a peace treaty with Muawiyah, knowing, because we have Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam are Sa'asatul Ibad, they're the most political of people. They understand politics, they understand when to rise and when to have peace and when to sin. So you see the soul of Hassan ibn Ali again was a remarkable thing, that at that time he saved Shi'ism. He saved the madhab of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam with this peace treaty. And then later on, this would continue for followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam to be able to strategically win with this peace treaty against Muawiyah. I'm going to conclude tonight with the hadith from Imam Hassan alayhi salam. So we talked about his life when it comes to God, his life when it comes to people, and his remarkable life when it came to his enemies. Imam Hassan alayhi salam is reported to have said, عجبت لمن يتفكر في مأكوله كيف لا يتفكر في معقوله. I am surprised with that person that thinks and is careful of what they eat, but is not careful about their thoughts or what enters their heart. فَيُجَنِّبُ بَطْنَ مَا يُؤْذِي, and is careful with what enters and what bothers his stomach. He is careful of that. He doesn't want to have something that harms his stomach. وَيُودِعُ صَدْرَهُ مَا يُرْضِي, but he leaves his heart open to what harms it. If you look today in society, people are so careful of the physical body that they have, especially, alhamdulillah, mashallah, in California, which is something good. It's not something bad. It's something bad when it's not balanced and you just focus only on the body and not the spirit. That is what we can learn from this hadith. It is good. Imam Hassan doesn't say, eat whatever you want to eat. He's just saying, I'm surprised at a person that takes so much care of this physical body, not to eat something that will harm him. Make sure everything is organic. Make sure even things we buy, sometimes it doesn't even make sense. They say broccoli, for example, doesn't even need to be organic. They say, for example, there's no need for pesticide, but we still buy it. Or bananas, I don't understand. Organic, you peel it or whatever. Anyways, so we are so careful of buying everything, which is good, of ourselves, or even you see today with a plant-based diet, which is something very good, because of cholesterol problems, diabetes, whatever. But when it comes to our spirit in our heart, which is actually the most important thing of insan, is not his body, is his spirit, his soul. This, we leave it open. We leave the heart open and susceptible to harm. What is the best way to reach God? Is it just knowledge? Or is it through amal salih? Is it through good action? If I told you right now and you tell the youth believe, and like, okay, how? This is this proof. Now this proof of philosophy. Now this proof in theology. Maybe necessarily you can't just get them to believe. Because that young person has to understand that the religion of Islam is a spiritual journey. That when you free your heart from any type of darkness and you free your heart from sin, that heart will be a heart of taqwa. That heart will be qalb as-salim. That heart will be the heart of submission. Then nur and light will flow in that heart, will shower upon that heart, will shine upon that heart. The path of the prophets has always been action. Amal salih, action. Knowledge is, of course, very important. But the benefit, that person will not realize the next stage in spirituality until they do good deeds. So if a person keeps their heart open and they look at haram, they see haram, any action that their body does, it goes back to the heart, then they'll truly not realize iman. They will not have true faith, because faith is not only based on the intellect. Intellect helps us in iman, but it needs to come from qalb as-salim. When you look at the narrations, it mentions very clearly that there's a beautiful narration that Imam alayhi salam mentions that the light of the believers, that imamat is nur and light. When God says, believe in the nur and light, actually the Imam says this nur and light is us, Ahlul Bayt. Believe in us. How do you believe in Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam? How is it their nur? The hadith says that actually the light of the believers in their hearts is the same light of Ahlul Bayt. They actually gets their radiance from Ahlul Bayt. And for some, that this light is higher, is actually brighter than the sun in midday, the hadith says. For some, their connection to Imam Zaman, their connection to Imam Hassan alayhi salam, Ali ibn Musa rida, the Prophet of Islam, is anwaru min ash-shams, is lighter than the sun. But whose heart? Is this everyone's heart? Then it says that those that love us and have our walaya, that will be in a qalb, a submissive heart, a heart that submits to the will of God and the Prophet and Imams. That light, that heart will be the heart that will be full of light and nur. Not the heart of a person that does haram day and night, or a person that is not careful of themselves, a person that does not guard against themselves. A carpenter came to Ayatollah Araki, and Ayatollah Araki was a great marja and mujtahid and give pieces of advice according to a person's occupation. He says, what do you do? He says, give me advice. He says, what do you do? He says, I'm a carpenter. He says, you're a carpenter? Build a wall, build a window in front of your heart, and don't allow anyone else but God. We come in the way, and I'm telling myself, in this day and age, with the devices that we have, with the amount of TV that we're watching, amount of things that we're watching on devices, we expect to watch all these things and not guard ourselves, but at the same time cry heavily for Imam Hussein. What I'm trying to say, there's a contradiction. We have to choose one of these. Guarding ourselves, guarding our hearts from this hadith, or true ma'nawiyat and true love of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. If we want that nur of Ahlul Bayt in ourselves, it only comes with hard struggle and hard work in guarding ourselves from haram, not allowing our chests to be open. So in another way to say it, it's either this, either we live a normal life, an unprotected heart, that is anything can come to it, or you live in your life with ihtiyat, with precaution, a life that you're careful, a life that is full of guarding and having taqwa, which means guarding yourself. Then you will see the fruits of imamat in your heart. Then the imams will be anwaru min ash-shams in your heart. Then for you, as the traditions have, the ghaibat and occultation of the imam of the age will not be occultation anymore for you. You will connect with Hujjat ibn Hassan alayhi salam, because he is the light, the sun behind the clouds. For you, you will be able to understand and have ma'rifat and understanding and connect with Imam Zaman. That heart that has indulged itself in sin, in materialism, has not guarded itself. Do not expect that heart to be able to submit to Ahlul Bayt and to have that nur and light. So therefore, Imam Hassan alayhi salam beautifully says, I am surprised with a person that cares about their body, what bothers it, to refrain from it, but not to refrain from what their heart damages their heart, and they leave their hearts open to harm. Inshallah, Allah will give us a qalb as-salim, a heart that is full of the love of Ahlul Bayt, inshallah. But remember, brothers and sisters, this takes hard work. This takes taqwa and refraining from sin to become like those that truly love Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Please recite salat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. If we can dim the lights and talk about one of the most madloom imams that we have. Ya Aba Muhammad, Ya Hassan ibn Ali, Ayyuha al-Mujtaba, Ya Rasulullah, we ask you to give our eyes tears, inshallah, tonight. Allow us to cry for Imam Hassan, because those tears, those eyes, will be eyes that will be saved from the hellfire. Ya Hassan ibn Ali, Ayyuha al-Mujtaba, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I ask you while I'm reading this, how many visitors did Imam Hussein alayhi salam have this year? How many visitors does Hassan ibn Ali have tonight? Where is the shrine of Hassan ibn Ali? He doesn't have a shrine. We are living in a time period where they destroyed his shrine. Maybe his only visitors are pigeons in Baqi. And all that's left is a rock that says, this is the shrine of Hassan ibn Ali, this is his grave. That's all that's left. Ya Hassan ibn Ali, ayyuha al-Mujtaba. How madloom were you, Imam Hassan? Even today, you are so madloom. Ya ibn Rasulullah, Ya Hujjatullahi ala khalqi, decisive argument of Allah. Ya Sayyidina wa Mawlana, inna tawajjahna wa istashfa'na. We ask you, Hassan ibn Ali, for intercession. We ask you to grab our hands. Remember, intercession, we said, is not in the hereafter only. Intercession of Hassan ibn Ali is in this world. Grab our hands, Hassan ibn Ali. Grab the hands of our children. We're living in a tough time, a tough place. وَتَوَسَّلْنَا بِكَ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَقَدَّمْنَاكَ بَيْنَ يَدَيْ حَاجَاتِنَا. Hassan ibn Ali, many people here have hawa'ij. They have many du'as, material du'as, spiritual du'as. We ask you very humbly, grant everyone, inshallah, their du'as, their hawa'ij. Ya wajihan indallah, ishfa lana indallah. When you look at the funeral of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, you see the funeral of Rasulullah, all of Medina, all of Arabia should have been in it, but they did not participate. It was Ali ibn Abi Talib washing and burying and preparing Rasulullah's body to be buried. And very madloom and alone, Ali ibn Abi Talib buried the Prophet of Islam. Very madloom. Then it came to the next ma'asum. So no funeral there, brothers and sisters, no funeral there. Then it came to the next infallible. Who died next? Lady Fatima Zahra, salawatullah alayha. This is the majlis of Lady Fatima too, because the mother is very happy when you come for her son and you cry for her son. But what happened to the funeral of Fatima Zahra? Dafinni bil-layl, kafinni bil-layl, wala tu'lim ahadan. Ali, do not tell anyone, enshroud me at night, bury me at night. Even Abbas, the uncle of Lady Fatima, did not come to the funeral. So again, no funeral. But then it came to the funeral of Ali ibn Abi Talib. After Ibn Muljam martyred him, and the best of God's creation was martyred, very privately and very secretly, Hassan ibn Ali buried his father. In a way, again, that no one knew where Ali alayhi salam was buried. They dug up different graves, so the Khawarij wouldn't come and get to the body of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Until the time of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, the grave of Ali ibn Abi Talib was hidden for us. And then Imam Sadiq showed after it was safe, he showed. But what about your funeral, Hassan ibn Ali? What kind of funeral do you have that they took him towards Rasulullah's grave, his grandfather's grave, his father's grave, and they came and says, do not bury him here. You do not have permission to bury him next to Rasulullah. What kind of funeral have you heard that they shoot arrows at the dead body? They shoot 70 arrows. They shoot arrows at the body of Hassan ibn Ali. He already suffered so much. His army stabbed him in the leg already. 70 times they tried to kill him, assassinate him. They would take the sajjada underneath him while he was praying and pull out the sajjada from him. But Hassan ibn Ali would hold his brother, would hold his dear brother and say, Wala yawm ka yawmaka ya Aba Abdullah. But no day, my dear brother, is like your day, because Hussein alayhi salam was very quiet during the time of Imam Hassan, but always allow Imam Hassan to speak. But now Imam Hassan on such a night, from his wife, he is so madloom that even in his own house he's madloom. His murderer is inside his own house, Ja'ada or Ju'da. How Imam Hussein alayhi salam had Rubab, and she only lasted 1 year crying for Imam Hussein after his martyrdom. But Imam Hassan had Ja'ada or Ju'da, given him poison. You know what poison does to somebody? I apologize about myself. They say that when someone's poisoned, it's as if they are bitten by a snake. They're twisting left and they're twisting right. They say that someone that is poisoned becomes very thirsty. They bring him a bowl. They bring Hassan ibn Ali a bowl. They say he spews, he spits out some blood inside this bowl. Some are happy, they're saying that maybe now the poison has left, but no, the type of poison they gave to Hassan ibn Ali is going to martyr him at the age of 48. وَلَا يَوْمَكَ يَا أَبَا عَبْدِ. Today we are talking about the bowl that Hassan ibn Ali had spit up his poison. But my dear brothers, my dear Azadaran, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, know that your Imam, that they left his body in Karbala and took the head. They left his body and took the head. And that time his head was in a different bowl. Hassan ibn Ali throws up inside one bowl, but the head of Hussein ibn Ali was inside a copper bowl in Kufa. And in Damashq was inside a golden bowl. At that time, you see, Mal'oon Yazid, pour, I apologize, Imam of the age, pour alcohol on the head of Hussein ibn Ali, playing with the lips of Hussein ibn Ali with a stick, while the children of Imam Hussein would watch, while Lady Zainab, salawatullah alayha, would watch. But there is one child that could not take this anymore. Lady Zainab, she is older, she can take this. God gave her patience. But how is a 3 or 4-year-old going to take this? When she takes the head of Hussein ibn Ali and sees and talks to Hussein ibn Ali and says, Father, it's been a long time since I talked to you, Father. Were you sad with me, Father? Did you ignore me, Father? Do you see my clothes? Little Ruqayya, little Sukaida says, do you see, as if she's saying, my clothes, it's torn into pieces, Father. Father, when you've come to visit me in the dungeons, did you bring bread for me, Father? Did you bring water for me, Father? And this is the head of Hussein ibn Ali from Kufa to Sham on spears. And finally reunited with him in Karbala. I apologize, my friends. Inna lillah, inna Alaihi raji'un, matam al-Hussein.
بے خطا مارا گیا سبت رسول دوسرا واہ حسن سبز قبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبت رسول دوسرا واہ حسن سبز قبا زہر سے ٹکڑ گئے خون سے کفن لال ہوا واہ حسن سبز قبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبت رسول دوسرا واہ حسن سبز قبا خون گلتے ہوئے بھائی کو بہن نے دیکھا اور تڑپ کے یہ کہا اور تڑپ کے یہ کہا تیری غربت پہ بھائی تیری زینب ہو فدا واہ حسن سبز قبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبت رسول دوسرا واہ حسن سبز قبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبت ماں کے دکھ سے ابھی آزاد کہاں تھی زینب ہو گیا کیسا غضب ہو گیا کیسا غضب باپ زندہ نہ رہا بھائی سوئے خلد گیا واہ حسن سبز قبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبت رسول دوسرا واہ سبز
خبا بے خطا مارا گیا صفت رسول دوسرا سبز خبا کر دیے زہر غلاغل نے جگر کے ٹکڑے اور قاسم کے لیے اور قاسم کے لیے کم سنی میں ہے یہ غم شام غریباں جیسا حسن سبز خبا بے خطا مارا گیا صفت رسول دوسرا سبز خبا بے خطا مارا گیا سبز خبا گھر سے ایک بار جنازہ جو نکل جاتا ہے گھر سے ایک بار جنازہ جو نکل جاتا ہے کب وہ پھر آتا ہے کب وہ پھر آتا ہے ایسا تابوت ہے یہ لوٹ کے جو گھر آیا حسن سبز خبا بے خطا مارا گیا صفت رسول سبز خبا بے خطا مارا گیا ماں کے دکھ سے ابھی آزاد کہاں تھی زینب ماں کے دکھ سے ابھی آزاد کہاں تھی زینب ہو گیا کیسا غضب ہو گیا کیسا غضب باپ زندہ نہ رہا بھائی سوئے خلد گیا حسن سبز خبا بے خطا مارا گیا صفت رسول حسن سبز خبا بے خطا مارا گیا دوسرا حسن سبز خبا زہر سے ٹکڑ جگر خون سے کفن لال ہوا حسن سبز خبا بے خطا مارا گیا صفت رسول دوسرا
میں اب درخواست کرتا ہوں انجمن غم خانان عباس کے سینئر نہا خان جناب علی ضیاء رضوی صاحب سے کہ وہ آ کر نہا پیش کریں
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم ساری تعریف اللہ کے لیے درود و سلام محمد و آل محمد کے لیے اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد سب سے پہلے میں انتہائی ممنون اور متشکر ہوں ادارہ جعفریہ اسلامک سوسائٹی کا کہ ان کے توسط سے مجھے اس امام بارگاہ میں ایک مرتبہ پھر یہ شرف حاصل ہو رہا ہے کہ میں اتنے سارے مومنین سے ملاقات کا شرف حاصل کر رہا ہوں اور اس کے ساتھ ہی ساتھ یقیناً مجھے یہ سعادت بھی نصیب ہوئی کہ میں نے ایک بہترین عالم دین کو ذکر امام حسن علیہ السلام کرتے ہوئے سنا اور سعادت نصیب ہوئی مجھے میں دعا گو ہوں کہ اللہ تعالیٰ اس ادارے کو دن دونی رات چوگنی ترقی عطا فرمائے اور آپ تمام مومنین مومنات سے التماس کروں گا اس ادارے کی دامے درمے قدم سخن آپ مدد فرماتے رہیں اور اس ادارے کو مزید ترقیوں کی طرف گامزن رکھیں۔ میرے ایک برادر خرد بہت ہی پیارے نوحہ خان ہیں ماشاءاللہ، بہترین نوحے سے انہوں نے ہم سب کو مستفیض فرمایا، کل وہاں سجادیہ میں بھی اور آج یہاں پر بھی بہترین نوحہ خانی کی انہوں نے۔ مجھے ان کا یہ حکم ملا ہے کہ میں ایک نوحہ جو میں کل وہاں پڑھ چکا ہوں، جنگل میں بھرے گھر کو لٹائیے زینب، میں اس کے چند اشعار پھر پیش کر دوں۔ برحبیب خدا ختم الانبیاء نعرہ صلوات۔ جنگل میں بھرے گھر کو لٹا آئی ہے زینب، اے شہر مدینہ، ارے جنگل میں بھرے گھر کو لٹا آئی ہے زینب، اے شہر مدینہ، اور عابد کو کسی طرح بچا لائی ہے زینب، اے شہر مدینہ، جنگل بندھوا کے رسن ہاتھوں میں اور خطبے سنا کے گھر بار لٹا کے گھر بار لٹا کے دیوار بڑے کفر کی ڈھائی ہے زینب، جس شہر میں شہزادیوں کی طرح رہی تھی، نازوں سے پلی تھی، نازوں سے پلی تھی، سر ننگے اسی شہر میں ہو آئی ہے زینب، جنگل میں بھرے گھر کو لٹا آئی ہے زینب، اے شہر مدینہ، اور ڈھارا سی بہت بھائی کو، جس بھائی کے دم سے دل پڑتا ہے غم سے، دل پڑتا ہے غم سے، ساحل پہ اکیلا اسے چھوڑ آئی ہے زینب، اور تھے اون محمد جو میری آنکھوں کے تارے، ماموں کے دلارے، ماموں کے دلارے، قربان انہیں بھائی پر بھر کر آئی ہے زینب. ارے نادم ہے بہت لا سکی قاسم کو نہ ہمراہ، واہ حسرت و دردہ. واہ حسرت و دردہ، کبرا کو مگر ساتھ لیے آئی ہے زینب. اور تھا اکبر نشاد جو اس گھر کا اجالا، وہ گیسوؤں والا. مرقد میں اکیلا اسے چھوڑائی ہے زینب. منگل میں بھرے گئے اور 6 ماہ کے اصغر کو بھی جھولے کے بجائے دکھ درد چھپائے. آغوش میں تربت کے سلا آئی ہے زینب. جنگل میں بھرے گھر کو لٹا آئی ہے زینب، اے شہر مدینہ. اور شبیر پاب روئے گا تا حشر زمانہ، ہے غم کا فسانہ. مجلس کی بنا شام میں ڈالائی ہے زینب. ارے رہ جائے گا اختر افق غم پہ تیرا نام، کیا خوب ہے انعام. نوحہ تیرا سننے کے لیے آئی ہے زینب. جنگل میں میرے پاس چند احکامات اور ہیں، ان کی یعنی تعمیل کرنے کی سعادت حاصل کر رہا ہوں. زیادہ دیر آپ کا نہیں لوں گا، زیادہ دیر نہیں پڑھ پاؤں گا. طیب علی کی دختر ہے چھوٹی، اس کا حکم ہے تو میں اس کو پیش کرنے کی سعادت حاصل کر رہا ہوں. تجھ کو میرا سلام اصغر ہائے اصغر 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 اے شاہدی کے دل پر ہدی کے دل پر اے روح قلب مادر اے شاہدی اے تشنہ کام مزتر اے بے زبان اصغر اے 6 مہینے والے تجھ کو میرا سلام اصغر اصغر ہائے اصغر اصغر گردن پر تیر کھا کر گردن پر تیر کھا کر وہ تیرا مسکرانا پہ تیر کھا کر اس حوصلے پہ تیرے روتا ہے خون زمانہ اے 6 مہینے والے تجھ کو میرا سلام اصغر ہائے اصغر اصغر شکوہ نہ کرنا اصغر شکوہ نہ کرنا اصغر پانی نہیں میسر آنسو بہا کے میں نے تربت کو کر دیا تر اے 6 مہینے والے تجھ کو میرا سلام اصغر یاد پسر جب آتی پسر جب آتی تو کوکھ اجڑی مادر یاد پسر جب آتی راتوں کو اٹھ کے اکثر کہتی تھی در پہ آ کر اے 6 مہینے والے تیرا سلام اصغر ہائے تاریخ کربلا کو تاریخ کربلا کو پڑھ کر انیس دیکھو تاریخ قاتل بھی سر جھکائے کہتے ملیں گے تم کو اے 6 مہینے والے اصغر
علی اکبر علی اکبر علی اکبر علی اکبر علی آنکھیں ترس گئی ہیں اکبر کے دیکھنے کو علی اکبر آنکھیں ترس گئی ہیں اکبر کے دیکھنے کو لیلا نے خط میں لکھا صغرا نے خط میں لکھا دل مضطرب ہے میرا صغرا نے دیکھا ارے رہ کے جا رہا ہے آنکھوں تلے اندھیرا آنکھیں ترس گئی ہے اکبر کے دیکھنے کو علی اکبر بس دیکھ دیکھ اس کو جیتے تھے اہل یسرا بس دیکھ دیکھ اس کو جیتے تھے بس دیکھ دیکھ اس کو جیتے تھے اہل یسرا بس دیکھ ارے تصویر مصطفیٰ تھا وہ موجائے لبالب آنکھیں ترس گئی ہیں اکبر کے دیکھنے کو آنکھیں ترس گئی ہیں اکبر کے دیکھنے کو اور پھر عید آئی سب نے پہنے نئے لبادے پھر عید ارے آئے نہیں پلٹ کر امت کے شہزادے آنکھیں ترس گئی ہیں اکبر کے دیکھنے کو علی اکبر سنتے ہیں اس کا چہرہ سب خون میں بھر گیا تھا سنتے ہیں اس کا چہرہ سب خون میں بھر گیا تھا سنتے کہتے ہیں اس کے دل میں نیزہ اتر گیا تھا آنکھیں ترس گئی ہیں اکبر کے دیکھنے کو علی علی اکبر سب بیویوں نے اس کو گھیرے میں لے لیا تھا، سب بیویوں نے اس کو گھیرے میں لے لیا تھا، سب ارے خیمے کے در کا پردہ اٹھ اٹھ کے گر رہا تھا، آنکھیں ترس گئی ہے اکبر کے دیکھنے کو، علی اکبر علی اکبر۔
اور آخر میں آغا عزت لکھنوی صاحب کا پڑھا ہوا ایک نوحہ جو کہ شاہد نقوی صاحب نے لکھا تھا، اس کے چند اشعار پیش کر رہا ہوں۔
وہ کربلا وہ شام میں غریباں، وہ تیرگی وہ زینب حزین، وہ حفاظت خیام کی، آیا وہ ایک سوار قریب خیام شاہ، بیٹی علی کی غیظ میں سوئے برس بڑھی، الٹی نقاب چہرے سے اپنے سوار نے پیش نگاہ زینب مظلوم تھے علی، ہر چند صابراتی بہت بنت فاطمہ بے ساختہ زبان پائے فریاد آ گئی، زینب نے کہا باپ کے قدموں سے لپٹ کر اب آئے او بابا، منہ سے لپٹ اب آئے ہو بابا، ارے جب لٹ گیا پردے اماں کا بھرا گھر، آئے جب لٹ گیا پردے اماں کا بھرا اب آئے ہو بابا، زینب نے کہا باپ کے قدموں سے اب آئے ہو بابا، ارے بابا اگر اس وقت نہ جب خاک پر دم توڑا تھا میرا اکبر ہائے جب خاک
توڑا تھا میرا اکبر اب آئے ہو بابا
اور کٹ کٹ کے گرے پیر پاجا بازوئے ابا اور کوئی نہ تھا پاس اس وقت صدا آپ کو دیتا تھا دلاور ہائے صدا آپ کو
دیتا تھا دلاور اب آئے ہو بابا
ارے جب فرش زمین بام پلے لرزاں بجا تھے اس وقت کہاں تھے جب باپ کے چلو میں تھا خون علی اصغر ہائے جب
کے چلو میں تھا خون علی اصغر اب آئے ہو بابا
اور جب بھائی کا سر کٹتا تھا میں دیکھ رہی تھی حضرت کو صدا دی سر کھولے ہوئے روتی تھی میں خیمے کے در پر آئے سر
روتی تھی میں خیمے کے در پر اب آئے ہو بابا
ارے جب بالی سکینہ کے کوہے چھینے گئے تھے لگتے تھے تماچے حسرت سے مجھے دیکھتی تھی بانو مزتر ہائے حسرت
مجھے دیکھتی تھی بانو مزتر اب آئے ہو بابا
اور جب شام کے قذاب ہمیں لوٹ رہے تھے خیموں کو جلا کے ارے آپ آ گئے ہوتے تو نہ چھنتی میری چادر ہائے آپ
ہوتے تو نہ چھنتی میری چادر اب آئے ہو بابا
اور جب لوگ بچا لے گئے لاشیں شہداء کے حق اپنا جتا کے بس تنے شبیر تھا پامالی کی زد پر ہائے بس
تنے شبیر تھا پامالی کی زد پر اب آئے ہو بابا
اور کیا فردوس سے یہ دیکھا نہ ہوگا کیا حشر بپا تھا جب پشت سے بیمار کے کھینچا گیا بستر ہائے جب پشت سے
بیمار کی کھینچا گیا بستر اب آئے ہو بابا
اور ایک رات کے مہمان ہیں اب آنے سے حاصل بازار میں ہم صبح کو جائیں گے کھلے سر ہائے بازار میں ہم
صبح کو جائیں گے کھلے سر اب آئے ہو بابا
تو شاہد رخ غیر طرفا بکھر جاتے تھے آنسو جب کھول کے گیسو ارے شاہد رخ غیر طرفا بکھر جاتے تھے آنسو جب کھول کے گیسو چلاتی تھی زینب میرے بابا میری چادر آئے چلاتی
میرے بابا میری چادر اب آئے ہو بابا
اور جب لٹ گیا پردیس میں اماں کا بھرا گھر اب آئے ہو بابا یہ ایک بہت پیارا نوحہ خان علی یہاں پر موجود ہے، یہ بھی ایک حکم کر رہا ہے، میں 2 یا 3 اشعار اس کے بھی پیش کر دیتا ہوں۔ ہائے یہ بچی کون ہے یہ تو سکینہ لگتی ہے، ہائے یہ بچی
کون ہے یہ تو سکینہ لگتی ہے
چھائے ہے جس پر بے بسی یہ تو سکینہ لگتی ہے،
ہائے بچی کون ہے یہ تو سکینہ لگتی ہے
آتی ہے مقتل کی طرف آتی ہے مقتل کی طرف دیکھا ہے کیوں سوئے نجف دیکھا ہے کیوں سوئے کیا اس کا دادا ہے علی
اس کا دادا ہے علی
کیا اس کا دادا ہے علی
یہ تو سکینہ لگتی ہے، آئے یہ بچی کون ہے یہ تو سکینہ لگتی ہے، آئے یہ بچی کون ہے یہ تو سکینہ لگتی ہے
آتی ہے جو روتی ہوئی آتی صدموں سے جان کھوتی ہوئی پڑھتی ہوئی نعت علی پڑھتی ہوئی نعت علی
یہ تو سکینہ لگتی ہے، آئے یہ بچی کون ہے یہ تو سکینہ لگتی ہے، آئے یہ بچی کون ہے یہ تو سکینہ لگتی ہے
کانوں سے کیوں خون ہے رواں کانوں سے کیوں خون ہے رواں اف یہ تماچوں کے نشان یہ ظلم اور یہ کم سنی
سکینہ لگتی ہے آئے بچی کون ہے یہ تو سکینہ لگتی ہے
کیوں اس قدر گھبرائی ہے کیوں اس قدر گھبرائی ہے یہ کس کو لینے آئی ہے یہ کس کو لینے آئی ہے یہ کس کو لینے آئی ہے کہتی ہے کس کو یابی کہتی ہے کس کو یابی کہتی ہے کس کو یابی یہ تو
سکینہ لگتی ہے آئے بچی کون ہے یہ تو سکینہ لگتی ہے آئے یہ بچی کون ہے یہ تو سکینہ لگتی ہے
جزاک اللہ زیاب اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم متوجہ زیارت بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد السلام علیکہ یا رسول اللہ السلام علیکہ یا ابن نبی اللہ السلام علیکہ یا ابن محمد المصطفیٰ السلام علیکہ یا ابن علی المرتضی السلام علیکہ یا ابن فاطمہ الزہرا سیدۃ نساء العالمین السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليك يا أبو الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا بيبي زينب وأم كلثوم وسكينة بنت الحسين. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين زين العابدين عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا مولاي محمد الباقر عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا مولاي جعفر الصادق عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا مولاي موسى كاظم عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء ومعين الزوفاء والفقراء. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الرضا. السلام عليك يا بيبي معصومة قم. السلام عليك يا مولاي محمد التقي عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا مولاي علي النقي عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا مولاي حسن العسكري عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا صاحب الأسر والزمان. الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا قائم الكفر والطغيان. السلام عليك يا دافع الظلم والعدوان. أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أنصارك وأعوانك جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك